Hello guys, it's Uchales here again, and welcome to this course where we'll be looking at selections in Photoshop. So basically, a selection is an area of a photo that you define. So when you create a selection, the area is editable. Like, let me give you an example. You have an image and you have a part of the image that you want to make brighter, or a part of the image that you want to make some adjustments to, or you want to edit. You use selection to define that area, and once that area is defined, whatever you do on that image affects only that defined area. So selection helps you define an area where you edit without the effect you're applying affecting other areas of the photo or other areas of the image. And we do all these things in Photoshop using the selection tools. So let's take a look at these tools that we use and see how we make these selections with these tools. Let's open up Photoshop and bring in some images that we can use to show how the selection tools work, or how we define areas of photos with the selection tools. So I go over to the file at the top here, I click on it, then I scroll down to open and I click on open. Then it opens the folder where I want to get my image from, which is my download folder. So I scroll down to search for the image I want to use. So I've seen this image here and I click OK. Okay. Let me open up another image as well. So we have two images for demonstrating the selection tools. So here is the second photo we want to use. Let me open. Okay. So right now we have the two images we want to use for the purpose of demonstrating the selection tools. And here the selection tools are the tools that are right below the move tool in the toolbar. The Marquee tool, the Lasso tool, and the quick selection tools. These three tools here, they are the tools we use to make selections in Photoshop. If you don't see these tools, it's probably because you are not in the essentials workspace. So you go to the top right here, then hit this little arrow here and choose essentials, and choose your workspace to be essentials, so that we will be on the same tool set. Also have the same set of tools. All right, right below the move tool we have the selection tools. These three tools here are the selection tools. The first tool is the rectangular marquee tool. As you have noticed, this version of Photoshop, once you hover your mouse on any of the tools, it gives you a brief overview or a brief definition of what the tool does. And in this case, as we hover our mouse or our cursor on the rectangular marquee tool, it instantly tells us that it makes a selection in the shape of a rectangle. That is why it is called rectangular marquee tool. So once we click on it, you see that some settings have appeared at the top here. If you also notice, beside the rectangular marquee tool, we have this tiny arrow at the bottom, which signifies that there are more tools in that category. Once I double click on that, Photoshop brings up more of these tools in that category. So we have the rectangular marquee tool, the elliptical marquee tool, the single row and the single column marquee tool. So let's get started with the first one, which is the rectangular marquee tool. It helps us make selections in the form of a rectangle. So to make selection in the rectangular marquee tool, all you have to do is to simply double click. Now I'm double clicking on my laptop touchpad. If you are using a mouse, you can just left click, hold down and drag. So I'm double clicking and I'm dragging out. Once I'm comfortable with the area that I've selected, I'll lift my hand from the touchpad on my laptop. So instantly you can see the area that we have selected, and we can move our selection if we want to, as long as this the rectangular marquee tool is still active. We can move our selection to fit into the purpose of our selection. Also, you can see that we are making this selection directly on top of the background layer, so we can actually create a new layer so that whatever effect we are applying within our selection will be on the new layer. That way we can have more control over whatever effect we are applying on this image. So now that we have this selection active, let me quickly go over to the brush tool. Click on the brush tool, and if you notice, our selection is still active. Our color for the brush tool is white. You can see it here, white. Then let me begin to paint. Let me increase the size of my brush tool by clicking the rectangular bracket, the right rectangular bracket on the keyboard. So the right rectangular bracket on the keyboard. So now I've increased the size of my brush. Let me begin to apply my brush on the image. If you notice, I'm applying my brush right now. I've double clicked on my touchpad on my laptop and I'm applying the brush, but you see nothing is happening within this place, within this part of the image. Why? Because this place I'm clicking and I'm applying the brush tool is not within the place we selected. So whatever thing you're doing right now in the Photoshop will only be visible within the selected area. So you see it right now. I'm still painting. I brought my brush tool closer to the selection, and instantly we are seeing the effect within the boundaries of the selection. So you see how the selection tool has helped us to define the area where we'll be applying our brush tool or whatever effect that we choose to apply in Photoshop. So maybe let's choose to blend it. See how that turns out. Okay. I just wanted to check out the blend mode and see how that turns out with the blend mode. But it's alright. So back to the normal blend mode. I don't want us to apply that. Anyways, so you get the point right now how the selection tool works. Then let's go back to the rectangular marquee tool. Let's delete this. Back to, so I'm holding down the layer where we apply the brush tool on, and I'm dragging it down to the delete icon that is at the bottom edge, at the bottom extreme right. If you notice, even as we deleted it, our selection is still active. So if you look at the top here, you can see that we have 3 modes for our selection. All right, so if we are on this first mode, which is new selection, so new selection, what that means is whenever you have a selection active and probably you want to make another selection within the same image, once you draw the second selection, the first selection gets disappears. All right, that's what the selection tool does in this mode. So once I make another selection, the first one I have made, the previous one I've made disappears. But if we are in the second mode, which is add to selection, which is called add to selection, if I make a second selection, instead of it deleting the first one, it adds to it. You see that? And I make another one, you see that the selection keeps adding up on the first one or on the previous ones. So we keep expanding the border of our selection by adding to the selection. Then if we go over to the next mode, which is subtract from selection, it just does the opposite of what the add to selection does. So with subtract from selection, once you draw a selection, it subtracts it from the existing selection. So once you draw, once you drag down, it subtracts that area from the existing selection, right? So probably from the previous selection that you are making, when you are adding selection, you added areas that you don't want to affect, probably by mistake, or probably you changed your mind. So you use the subtract from selections to remove these areas from your selection so that the effect you apply won't be visible or won't be affected by that area. So you get to remove them. Then we have the last mode, which is intersect with selection. With this mode, you make visible only the intersecting parts of your selection. Now this is what that means. I just made another selection right now, and the only part that will be visible when I release my hand from the touchpad of my laptop is the parts that are intersecting between these two selections. Sorry? Oh, I have not chosen that. Sorry. Okay. Right now I have chosen that mode. So the only part that will remain visible right now is the parts that are intersecting, are just the areas of the two selections that are intersecting. So right now you see what just happened. Let me draw another selection so that you see how it happens. So as I've drawn this selection over the existing selection, the part that is not selected disappears, and the only part of these two selections that are intersecting are the parts that will show. So that's how this mode works. Now we've understood how the rectangular marquee tool works, let's move to the elliptical marquee tool. Simply, the elliptical marquee tool allows us to draw selections in the shape of an ellipse. By the shape of an ellipse, we mean circular shape or circular form. So this tool does exactly what we do with the rectangular marquee tool, but then this is in form of an ellipse or a circle. So I double clicked and I'm dragging out, and I'm looking at the shape of the marquee tool selection to see if it fits or if it's okay with what I have in mind before I release my hand. But then if I want a uniform ellipse, like I want something that is round and not this oval, I can hold down on my shift key on my keyboard, and once I do that, you see that the ellipse marquee tool becomes circular instead of the oval shape it had before. So, and the circular shape is uniform as I drag in on out. So now I have released my hand from my touchpad on my laptop. So we have our selection right here, and just as I shared with you before, those four modes we have in the rectangular marquee tool are still present here. So you can use this to add to selections. All right. We can use the third mode to subtract. We can use the third mode to subtract from selections. And then we can use the fourth mode. We can use the fourth mode to choose only the part of our selections that are intersecting. And here we go. So this is how the tool works. And for now, we'll be looking at the rectangular marquee tool and the ellipse marquee tool. We are leaving these single row marquee tools and the single column marquee tools. So let's go to the second category, which is the lasso tool. The lasso tool helps us to make freehand selection. In the previous tool, which is the marquee tool, we were able to make either rectangular selection or elliptical or circular selection. But then here, the lasso tool helps us to make freehand selection. So that means once I double click on my photo and I begin to move my hand, I can decide to move it anyhow I want. All right. And on top of here, we still have the four modes which we used previously for the marquee tools. So I don't want to go further to be using them. At least we now have the idea of how they work because we use them extensively in the marquee tool. So once we double click on the tiny arrow at the bottom of this lasso tool, it gives us access to other tools within that category. Then other tools here within the category are the polygonal lasso tool and the magnetic lasso tool. So let's click on the polygonal lasso tool and see how that works. So the polygonal lasso tool, once you hover on that tool, Photoshop gives us a brief explanation of what that tool does. It helps us to create straight edged selections. And this is what that means. Unlike the first tool, which is the lasso tool, where we get to create freeform selections, the polygonal lasso tool helps us to create selections anyhow we want, but then they have to be in straight lines. So that's what we mean by straight line selections. So you do that by clicking at the points where you want to select. So I click on this point, and if you notice, I have a straight line, and this is an angle, right? I click on this angle and I move my hand in. I click on that angle and I move my hand out. I click on that angle. So you see how our selection, we are making selections the way we want, but then they are all in straight lines. All right. So this is it. We've made straight line selections around this lady in this photo. So whatever effect I choose to apply now only affects or is only made visible within our selection. Now let's try out another tool within that category. But to do that first, I just realized I haven't told you how you remove this selection that we have already. It's either you use Ctrl Z to do that, or you can just use Ctrl D. Ctrl D simply means deselect. So once you use Ctrl D, our selections disappears. Or you can go to the top here, to these options at the top here, and go to select. Once you go to select, you scroll down to deselect. And once you hit deselect, our selection disappears. Now you have the room to apply another selection or apply other effect or go ahead with your editing or design. Because once the selection remains active, whatever thing you apply in this photo or whatever effect you apply will only keep being visible in the selected area. So once you're finished applying your effect, you just go ahead and apply deselect. So let's go ahead to the third tool in this lasso tool category, which is the magnetic lasso tool. The magnetic lasso tool makes a selection by snapping to image edge. Unlike the other tools where we define the edges by ourselves, the magnetic lasso tool choose the edge by itself, the edge of the image by itself, by identifying the edges of the image using artificial intelligence. So once I click, I just have to first of all click on for the starting point and I move my hand. So as I move my cursor, I'm not clicking anymore, but somehow the tool is trying so hard to identify the edge of this lady. And it's able to do that by comparing color differences in the photo. So you see how this tool is nicely following the edge of this lady. I'm not clicking anything right now. I'm just moving my hand around the edge of the lady, and this tool is snapping to the edge of this lady. So this tool is not 100% accurate. If you look at this hand here, you see that it jumped a part of the hand. All right. So it's not 100% accurate, but to an extent, it is been able to select our image by identifying the edges of the lady in this photo. We also use these tools to duplicate areas of our design or to copy part of a design. Now let me show you what I mean. During photo manipulation, photo manipulation where we get to add or merge 2 or 3 images together, or where we pick elements or pick some elements from different images to combine together to create wonderful concepts. All right, sometimes we get to cut out parts of other images to merge or to bring into another image. So we use these tools to achieve that. So right now, let's say we want to duplicate the image of this girl, or we want to cut her out from this image or from this photo. What we have to do is to, now that we have this area selected, now we have the girl or the lady selected, we just go to our move tool. Once we click on our move tool, then we double click on this girl or ours that we have selected, and move. So you see how we have cut her out from this image. So once you move her out, she is cut out from that area where she is. Then you can move her, hold down and move her to the, move your hand to the other image, to the bar here that is containing the other image I imported previously, the other image that I opened previously. So once I get to the new image and I release my hand, you see this lady is right here in the new image. So I can choose to keep her here and begin to edit her to blend in with this new image. All right. So we are not doing this. So let me just delete this, because this is just for the purpose of demonstration. Then also, now we are still in our move tool. I told you that we can cut, okay, moving this out, cut it out of where it was before. Then we can actually choose to copy this part out. Instead of cutting it out, we can actually choose to copy it. Let's say we have a situation where we want to duplicate a particular element in a design. Let's say we have one element like this lady here. We have just one picture of her in this design and we want to duplicate her in this photo. Like we want to have more of her. We don't want her to appear just one place. We want to have her image, like 3 different images of herself in one photo. But then we have just one image here. So the way we do it is, right now we have her selected, right? Go to your keyboard, hold down your Control and your Alt key together. And if you're using a MacBook, you have to hold down your Command and your Option key together. And once you hold these 2 keys down, if you look, our cursor has turned to 2 arrows in one, a black arrow and a white arrow. It has become double. If I release my hand from those 2 keys on the keyboard, you can see we have just one black arrow as our cursor. You can see it now. We just have one black arrow as our cursor. But if I hold down on the Control and the Alt, you see our cursor has changed to 2 headed arrows. To 2 arrows which is black and white. What these 2 arrows means is duplicate. So once we are holding down on the Control and on the Alt on the keyboard, we'll now go to our mouse. Hold down to the left, hold our left key on the mouse or on your keyboard. Or if you choose to use the touchpad on your keyboard, you can just double click. And once you double click, you move the girl, or you move your selection to the area you want. And once you move the girl to that area, you just release your hand. You have successfully duplicated this girl, or the image of the girl. And once we have 2 images now, let's add one more because we need 3 of them. I'm holding down on my Control and Alt again. Immediately as I hold down on my Control and Alt, my cursor has changed to 2 headed arrows, and I hold down on my mouse or double click on my touchpad and I move again. You see, I've been able to duplicate the girl again. So I release my hand. You see, the girl has been copied to another place. I can choose with my 2 hands still on with my 2 fingers still on the Control and Alt. I can choose to double click again and keep duplicating this girl, keep duplicating her all around my image. So for us to deactivate this selection, as I told you before, you just go and hit Ctrl D. So we have duplicated the picture of this lady all around our image. So you see how we use the Marquee tool or the Lasso tool to copy a particular area, or to select a particular object in an image and then duplicate them. We use this a lot during photo manipulation. We can go to an image. Probably we need an apple here in this image or in for our design, but we don't have any apple here yet. So but we have a picture that has an apple. We just go over to that image picture or image, select the apple, then copy the apple to this image where we want to use. Okay, let me just head over to this image to this other second image where we have this dog. Probably we need this dog in the other image. Then I'll use my magnetic lasso tool to select the edges of the dog. All right. So we have the dog selected. I just hit my move tool and move the dog to the new image. Now our dog is here, so we can choose to even choose to manipulate them, increase the size to whatever we want. Click OK. Or probably maybe we want to duplicate the dogs, like we have 2 dogs in the image. So I can hold my Control and Alt and duplicate the dog, and I can reduce the size of this dog to make it look like it's actually a baby dog. Like, so I hit my Control D to deselect. So it's almost looking like this is daddy or mommy dog and the baby dog. All right, so I know this looks weird, but at least you get my point, just for the purpose of demonstration, or for you to see how the selection tools, how we use it in photo manipulation. So let's go back and delete all these things. We can use Ctrl Z to undo a lot of the things we have done in this image. Ctrl Z, and now I hit Ctrl D to deselect. So we are back to just one image of this girl. So basically, beyond using the Marquee tool and the Lasso tool to define a particular area of the image we want to apply an effect on, we can also use the Lasso tool and the Marquee tool for photo manipulation. So let's go to the last selection tool, which is, we actually have 2 tools in this category. First of all, we have the quick selection tool. If we double click, we can see the second tool in that category, which is the magic wand tool. For the quick selection tool, it allows us to make a selection by finding and following the edges of an image. So once we click on this, this is almost like the brush tool, right? You can increase the size of the tip of the quick selection tool, and I can do that either by going to the top here to increase the size. It also have the settings that comes with the brush tool. You can see the hardness here, spacing, and even the angle. All right, so can come here and use the rectangular bracket on my keyboard to increase the size of this tool. So definitely what this tool does is we use it to quickly select, just the same way the magnetic lasso tool identify the edges of images. This tool also identify the edge of images. So we just paint on the image and it selects it by identifying the edges. So let me quickly zoom in into this image by clicking the Control and plus key. Control and plus key, so that you can see what this tool is doing. Then I reduce the size of this tool and I begin to apply. So let me Control Z. Let me reduce the size further. So let me try to select the image of, let me try to select this lady, and you see, as I paint on this lady, the tool kind of try to identify the edges. See how amazing this tool is. It tries to identify the edges of the girl. So we use this tool for quick selection, just as the name implies. We use this tool too for photo manipulation. And if you noticed, while we are selecting the hand, this part also we somehow, the tool somehow selected the background too. But we can take care of that by going to the top here and click on this part of the tool, which is subtract. Click on this mode, which is subtract from selection, and once you click on that, we come to the middle here and click on this middle where we don't want it to select, and you see that we just adjusted that selection. So this tool is not perfect, but then it helps us to quickly select objects in our photo, and it works best when we have a simple background like this. So you see that we just have one colored background, which is just golden yellow. So it's easier. Assuming we have a busy background, it would have been difficult for this tool to identify the edge of this lady, because the busy background will be distracting it. Then let's check out the magic wand tool. So let me hit Ctrl D to deselect. The magic wand tool selects similar colored image area. All right, unlike the quick selection tool that selects images by checking out their edges, the magic wand tool selects images by identifying their colors. So in this case, let me control 0, yeah, so that we can have our image at full size. Now once I click on the background of this image, which is the golden yellow, once I click on it, you see that every part of this image that have golden yellow is instantly selected, leaving behind this area that has shadow and this area that has a lighter shade of the golden yellow. So it selects only the area that has the same color. This area is still golden yellow, yeah, but it's slightly different because of the shadow of the girl. The shadow of the girl made this plate have a darker shade of the yellow. So this tool leaves that place out and doesn't select that place. So this tool selects images based on color. It has these same settings that other tools have. It has it as well, and it has other settings. It also has tolerance, which helps it control the precision. So basically, we can also go to those areas that are not selected, the darker areas, and click on them. And once we click on those areas as well, you see that this particular area becomes selected and other places become deselected. This is because we are in a new selection mode. So if we go to the add selection mode, the next place we select adds up to the previous place we have selected. So you see, this place has been selected. As I click on the on other part as well, it has been selected. So I have to click on this area as well to select it. I have to keep clicking. And this other shadow here. So right now we've been able to select the background of this image, leaving our subject, or this, which is the lady, alone. So the magic to select by identifying the color of an area, all right, and we use the tolerance here to control the precision of its selection. So that's that for the three selection tools we have in Photoshop, which is the Marquee tool, the Lasso tool, the Magic Wand tool, and the Quick Selection tool. This is just an introductory course to the selection tools we have in Photoshop, which are the Marquee tools, the Lasso tools, the Magic Wand tool, and the Quick Selection tool. In the next course, we'll be using the selection tools to actually make something meaningful in Photoshop. See you in the next course.